Chapter 1. The Post-Breakup Recalibration. Darla Thomas stood in the middle of her living room, hands on her hips, staring at the shapeless cardboard box she had been avoiding for 3 weeks. The box had survived 2 moves and 1 heartbreak, and its sole purpose, apparently, was to mock her. She exhaled sharply, crouched down, and opened it with a box cutter she'd bought during her brief "I can fix everything myself" phase. Inside were relics of her last relationship, the one she had poured herself into until she felt wrung out like a towel stretched too thin. A baseball cap, a novelty mug, a hoodie that still smelled like someone who didn't deserve to take up even that much space in her mind. "Out," she muttered, tossing the hoodie into the trash bag with unceremonious flair. "All of you freeloaders." Her cat, Juniper, blinked from the couch, unimpressed but supportive in her detached feline way. The breakup had been spectacularly anticlimactic. No screaming, no throwing things. Just a quiet, exhausted end where Darla realized she was the only one still trying, and the only one who cared about trying. He had cheated, again, not because of passion or lust but because he could. Because charm had carried him through life like a backstage pass he never stopped flashing. Well, that backstage was closed. Permanently. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table. A message from her friend Talia appeared. "Talia, we're at the cafe. You coming or still in goblin mode?" Darla snorted and texted back. "Darla, evolving out of goblin mode. Slowly. Talia, your pace is concerning. Reina." Translation. "We miss you. Also, we ordered muffins for the table." Muffins were a kind of love language among Darla's friend group, even if most of them were more invested in matching purse colors to their nail polish than anything else. They loved her, but they were baffled by her lack of interest in sparkly things. She grabbed her coat, slipped into comfortable boots, and headed out, enjoying the brisk February air. Leelanau in winter was a stubborn blend of lake wind and pale sunlight, beautiful in the way an old photograph was beautiful, full of meaning without trying. At the cafe, she found Talia, Reina, and Brielle gathered around a corner table. All 3 wore variations of the same trendy shade of beige, like a coordinated trio of influencer snow owls. "There she is," Talia said, waving dramatically. Reina pushed a plate toward her. "Eat. You look like you've been living on caffeine and spite." "That's only half true," Darla said, sliding into the seat. Brielle leaned in. "So, when are you getting back out there?" Darla groaned. "Can I at least finish my muffin before we jump into my romantic failures?" "It's been months," Brielle insisted. "It's been 5 weeks," Darla corrected. "Exactly." Darla shook her head. "I'm not doing this again. I'm not dating charm factories anymore." "Charm is not the problem," Reina said. "Charm was literally the entire problem," Darla replied. "I'm done with men who think charisma is a personality. I want quiet." All 3 blinked, as though she had said she wanted to date a plant. "Quiet?" Talia asked. "Like a librarian? I mean someone grounded, calm, no emotional tornadoes. Someone whose past isn't chasing them like a bounty hunter." Brielle sipped her latte and sighed. "You're describing a mythical creature." "No," Darla said, taking a slow bite of muffin. "I'm describing someone who isn't putting on a show." Reina tapped her manicure against the table. "You've always been like this. You don't care about nice things, you don't care about flashy guys, you don't care about keeping up with anything." "That's because none of that matters," Darla said with a shrug. "I like real people, and I like quiet." Talia leaned back, giving her a dramatic squint. "You, Darla Thomas, are allergic to trends." "That's not true," Darla said. "I bought that avocado-shaped candle last month. It was on clearance," Brielle said, deadpan. "Still counts." They laughed, and Darla felt something inside her loosen for the first time in days. It was nice having friends, even if they occasionally judged her wardrobe, her taste in men, and her complete disregard for TikTok dances. After brunch, she drove home feeling lighter, humming along to a playlist she'd been too emotionally scrambled to enjoy before. She hadn't realized how much she needed a normal morning until she got one. When she stepped inside her house, Juniper greeted her by knocking a pen off the counter with deliberate disdain, a sign of affection in cat language. "Fine," Darla said. "I'll play with your string toy, but first, I'm fixing that leaky sink." She marched into the bathroom with determination, rolled up her sleeves, and stared at the underside of the sink like a warrior facing a beast. The pipe was dripping steadily, a tiny but obnoxious reminder that life didn't pause just because she was having feelings. She tightened a valve, twisted something that looked twistable, and, after a triumphant moment, the leak accelerated dramatically. Water shot sideways like a betrayal. And "oh no no no," Darla yelped, scrambling to shut off the faucet. She managed to stop the spray but not the drip, which was now a steady stream. Juniper observed from the doorway, tail twitching in judgment. Darla wiped her forehead. "Don't start with me." She tried again, and after the 3rd attempt nearly flooded the cabinet. She slumped onto the floor, defeated. Her phone buzzed. "Talia, remember, call a professional. You trying to fix plumbing is how horror movies start." Darla groaned. "Fine," she said aloud to no one. I'll call a plumber. After scrolling through a list of names, she found one with good reviews and a same-day availability. Hale Home Repair. She dialed. A deep, steady voice answered. Mason Hale. Darla blinked at the phone, surprised by how unexpectedly warm the voice was. Calm but present, like someone who didn't rush his words or his thoughts. Hi, she said. I have a leak, a big leak, in the bathroom, and I tried fixing it myself, but my plumbing skills are theoretical. There was a soft sound, maybe a chuckle, maybe an exhale, but whatever it wasn't mocking. I can stop by within an hour, he said. Don't touch anything until I get there. I wasn't planning to, she admitted. Good. After giving him her address, she hung up. Juniper jumped onto her lap, purring as if pleased by the decision. Well, Darla said, stroking the cat. At least one of us knows what we're doing. While she waited, she tried to make the bathroom presentable, which involved frantically wiping floors and pretending she hadn't flooded half the cabinet. She had just tossed a wet towel into the hamper when there was a firm knock on the door. She opened it and found herself face to face with the quietest kind of man she had ever seen. Mason Hale looked like someone carved from the calm part of the woods. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a gray work jacket and sturdy boots. His brown hair was a little tousled, as if he'd run a hand through it on the way over. His eyes were gentle, not soft, just steady, like he actually noticed the world around him. Miss Thomas? He asked. His voice was just the same as on the phone, low, even unhurried. That's me, she said, stepping aside. Come in. Sorry about the mess. And the water. And just everything. He gave a small nod. Not dismissive, not indulgent. Just a nod. Show me the leak. She led him to the bathroom, explaining her failed attempts with increasing embarrassment. Mason crouched under the sink, assessing the damage without comment. After a moment, he glanced up at her. You didn't make it worse, he said. This was going to happen anyway. Darla blinked. Really? It wasn't much of a sentence, but somehow it carried more reassurance than any flowery speech she'd heard from past boyfriends. He went to work, efficient and silent, while Darla hovered uselessly nearby until she realized she was hovering and retreated to the hallway. 10 minutes later, he emerged. Fixed, he said simply. She blinked again. Already. It was a worn connector. I replaced it. He handed her the old part, which looked like it had survived a war. Oh, she said. That makes me feel a little better. He nodded again. You did fine calling for help. Something warm fluttered in her chest. Unexpected and unwelcome, like a blush she hadn't invited. Thank you, she said. He packed up his tools, gave Juniper a polite nod when the cat sniffed at his boot, and headed for the door. I'll send the invoice tonight, he said. Okay. He gave one more nod, his apparent signature move, and left. Darla closed the door and pressed her back against it, heart inexplicably fluttery. Quiet men, she had said. Quiet. Well, this one was practically a full-color illustration of her type. Juniper meowed. Yes, Darla said softly. We're in trouble. Chapter 2. The Quiet Plumber. The next morning, Darla woke up with the faintest sense of anticipation buzzing under her skin. An unfamiliar, delicate little hum that she immediately scolded herself for noticing. It was a plumbing repair, she told her reflection as she brushed her teeth. A leak, a fix, a nod, and that's it. Not an epic romance. Calm down. Her reflection did not look convinced. To distract herself, she threw on a sweater, jeans, and a messy bun that was only half intentional, then set about making coffee. Juniper wove between her legs, demanding breakfast with the entitlement of a small, furry empress. As the coffee brewed, Darla replayed Mason Hale's visit in her mind. Not on purpose. It was more like her brain had cued the memory without permission. His steady voice, his quiet focus, his complete lack of interest in making an impression. He was the exact opposite of her ex, or any man she dated if she was being honest. No bragging. No performative charm. No I can fix it swagger paired with zero actual fixing. Just competence. Competence was criminally underrated. Her phone buzzed with a message from Raina. Raina, did your sink explode again or did the plumbing gods show mercy? Darla, fixed. Plumber came yesterday. Raina, ooh, and? Darla, and he fixed the leak. That's it. Talia, name and height of the plumber immediately. Darla, no. Brielle translation. He's cute. Darla rolled her eyes so hard she nearly lost balance. She put her phone face down and decided the group chat could live without her for a while. She was halfway through her coffee when someone knocked on the door. She froze. Juniper froze. The knocking continued, firm but not alarming. No way, Darla whispered to the cat. No way he's back. She checked the peephole. He was back. Mason Hale stood on her porch, hands tucked into his jacket pockets, gazed down as though he wasn't entirely sure knocking had been the right choice. Darla pulled the door open. Oh, she said, scrambling for composure. Hi. Morning. Mason offered a small nod. Just wanted to drop this off. He held up a plastic package, her replacement faucet aerator, the one she didn't even know needed replacing. You ordered that for me? She asked. It came with the parts kit, he said. Didn't need it yesterday, but your sink will run better with it. He said this like it was simply what people did, bring efficiency upgrades to customers out of quiet, unshowy thoughtfulness. That's very nice, Darla said, trying not to beam like a lighthouse. Should have installed it yesterday, Mason added. Thought I'd stop by. Oh, well, thanks. She wondered if she should invite him in. Would that be weird? Professional boundaries? Was this even a professional boundary situation? He was literally holding a faucet aerator. How dangerous could that be? As if sensing her internal spiral, Mason stepped back slightly, not retreating, just giving her space. Didn't mean to interrupt your morning, he said. I can. No, it's fine. I mean, you're not interrupting anything important. Except maybe my caffeine routine. She held up her mug as proof of life. His lips twitched, the faintest suggestion of a smile. A rare phenomenon, she suspected. Possibly a collector's item. Well, Mason said, clearing his throat softly. You can DIY this or I can put it in. Takes 2 minutes. Darla hesitated. Pride said, I can absolutely do this. Memory of flooding her bathroom said, Woman, sit down. I would appreciate the help, she admitted. He nodded, stepped inside, and knelt by the sink. Juniper approached him, sniffed his tool bag, then rubbed against his leg as though claiming him for the household. She likes you, Darla said, surprised. Most animals do. Mason gently scratched under Juniper's chin, and the cat melted instantly. They're easy to read. And humans aren't? Darla asked. Usually not. He stood to run the faucet, testing the flow. The water arced smoothly, no sputters, no leaks, no chaos. It was the kind of controlled, efficient result that made Darla's heart do a very stupid, very unnecessary flutter. All set, he said, stepping back. Darla leaned on the counter. You really didn't have to come back. I know. But you did. He gave another small nod. I like when things work the way they're supposed to. That sounds refreshing. He paused, looking at her for a moment in a way that made the air thicken. Not heavy, but aware. She opened her mouth to say something else, anything else, but her phone buzzed loudly on the counter, making both of them flinch. She glanced at the screen. Incoming call. Lex, her ex Darla's stomach dropped like a stone. Mason shifted subtly, as though he couldn't help noticing her reaction. He didn't ask. He didn't intrude. He simply stepped back with quiet understanding. You can get that, he said softly. No, Darla said quickly. No, I don't want to. He nodded once, then picked up his bag. I'll get out of your way. Mason, got another job across town, he said. Didn't want to leave this undone. Oh, her fingers tightened around the edge of the counter. Thank you. Really. His gaze lingered for one heartbeat longer than necessary. Just enough for her to feel it. Just enough to know he wasn't indifferent. Then he nodded and stepped outside. The door clicked shut. Darla exhaled hard, leaning forward with both palms braced on the counter. Great, she muttered. Now I'm what? Flustered? Over a plumber who barely speaks in full sentences. Juniper jumped onto the counter. Yes, Darla told the cat. You may judge me. Her phone buzzed again. Lex, can we talk? Just 5 minutes. Darla silenced it and shoved the phone into a drawer, as if that might pressure the universe into deleting him. She wasn't ready for that conversation. Not today, not tomorrow, maybe not ever. She needed space, boundaries, maybe several oceans and a kayak. She wanted to focus on rebuilding her life, not revisiting the ruins of her past relationship. She poured the rest of her coffee into a travel mug, grabbed her coat, and stepped outside, hoping a long walk would clear her mind. But as she locked the door behind her, she couldn't help glancing down the street where Mason's truck had been parked. She told herself she was only checking to see if he'd driven off. She told herself it meant nothing. But the small, inexplicable smile tugging at her mouth said everything else. That evening, Darla found herself replaying the day again. Mason's calm presence, his understated humor, the way he seemed to exist outside the noise of the world. There was something magnetic about him, not in the loud, showy sense, but in the quiet way gravity worked. She curled up on the couch with a blanket and a bowl of soup, the glow from a single lamp softening the room. Juniper settled beside her with a dramatic sigh, possibly judging her for thinking about a man who fixed faucets. I'm not getting ahead of myself, Darla said defensively. Juniper disagreed with a tail flick. It was just a pleasant interaction with a pleasantly quiet man. Another tail flick. Fine. Yes, I noticed him. And he noticed me. She paused. Probably. Maybe. He nodded at me several times. That feels meaningful. Juniper stretched, utterly unimpressed. Darla sank deeper into the couch. Whatever. I'm not doing anything about it. Except she absolutely wanted to. And that realization sat in her chest like a spark. Small, surprising, and impossible to ignore. Chapter 3. Sparks in the Silence. Darla spent the next 2 days doing something she hadn't done in years. Thinking before reacting. It was exhausting. She vacuumed. She reorganized the bookshelf by color, then by genre, then by vibe, then surrendered and put everything back randomly, which somehow felt more honest. She deep cleaned the stove. She let Juniper play with a string toy for 20 uninterrupted minutes, which Juniper appreciated until she decided the string wasn't playing back aggressively enough. But mostly, Darla waited for something she refused to label as waiting. She absolutely was not waiting for a plumber to give her a second glance. She was simply open to the concept of future repairs. By Friday afternoon, she had convinced herself she wasn't thinking about Mason at all. Not even a little. She had successfully scrubbed him from her thoughts, except for the small detail that she kept replaying the way he gently scratched Juniper's chin, and how Juniper, destroyer of socks and hater of men, had liked him. She was sitting at her kitchen island with a mug of tea, trying to pretend she wasn't glancing toward the driveway every so often, when her phone buzzed. Raina, girls' night tonight? We're thinking pizza and questionable Netflix choices. Darla, I'm in. Need distraction. Talia, is the distraction tall, blue collar, and quiet? Darla, no. The distraction is carbs. Brielle, so. The plumber. Darla, goodbye. She put the phone down, face warm. Her friends were relentless, but they weren't wrong. She did need a night away from her spiraling thoughts. An hour later, she was dressing for the evening, trying on 3 outfits before landing on jeans and a soft sweater. Simple, comfortable, non-desperate. Juniper watched from the bed, judging her for attempting human interaction. I don't know what your issue is, Darla said, slipping on her shoes. You loved him. Juniper blinked, unimpressed by her accusation. Whatever, Darla muttered. The moment she stepped onto her driveway, she noticed something unusual. A truck parked along the curb, a familiar one. Her heart did a somersault she refused to acknowledge. Mason stood beside the truck, loading a toolbox into the back. He looked up when she approached, offering a small nod, the kind that somehow communicated a full sentence. Evening, he said. Hey, Darla replied, hoping her smile didn't look like she'd practiced it in the mirror. Everything okay? Yeah, had a job 2 houses down. He closed the truck bed gently, with the same care he seemed to apply to everything he touched. Saw your car. Thought I'd say hi. Her pulse stuttered. Oh, hi. Great. Very articulate. Mason's gaze lowered briefly before returning to her face. How'd the sink hold up? Perfectly, she said. No leaks. No floods. No household disasters. That's good. A tiny silence followed, comfortable but charged, like the pause before a soft snowfall. Darla tucked her hands into her coat pockets. I didn't expect to see you. Didn't expect to be here, he said. Neighborhood's not in my usual route. Oh, she tried not to beam. He shifted slightly, almost as if he wanted to say more but didn't want to overstep. Darla felt something in her chest tug gently at the restraint in his posture. So, she began, thank you again for the aerator. You don't need to keep thanking me, he interrupted softly. I know, but I don't usually have people show up on my porch to fix things I broke. You didn't break it, he said, calm as ever. She laughed. I live dangerously near plumbing. His mouth tugged into a small smile, the kind he seemed to save for special occasions. You do. They stood there for a moment, the winter air cool around them, the quiet between them warm. So, Mason said, clearing his throat, you heading somewhere? Oh yeah, girls' night. Pizza. Bad movies. Nothing glamorous. He nodded as though that made complete sense to him. Sounds nice. It is, she agreed. What about you? Long day. He shrugged lightly. Not bad. Quiet. He paused, then added, I like quiet. Darla swallowed, trying not to read meaning into everything he said, except she absolutely was. Yeah, she said softly. Me too. Another silence drifted in, gentle and unhurried. Well, she finally said, I should get going before my friends start sending search and rescue texts. Right? Mason stepped back, giving her space. She waved, awkward but sincere. See you around? His gaze held hers for a moment longer than expected. Yeah, he said quietly. You will. Girls' night was exactly as chaotic as expected. Raina had chosen a movie that, according to the description, was romantic but aggressively unrealistic. Talia brought a charcuterie board shaped like a heart. Brielle insisted on doing tarot readings for everyone, despite the fact that she had learned tarot via a 3-day TikTok binge. By the time they got to dessert, Darla was relaxed and slightly giddy from sugar and friendship. So, Brielle said, drawing a card dramatically, Darla's love life, let's see. No, Darla protested. No cards. No readings. No doom. It's not doom, Brielle said. It's guidance. It's doom. Talia smirked. You've been smiling weirdly all night. Spill. Is this about the plumber? Raina asked. There is no plumber story, Darla insisted. Your face says otherwise, Brielle said. Darla sighed. Defeated. Fine. He came back yesterday to install some extra part on the sink. And I saw him again tonight because he had a job down the street. The three women exchanged feral, delighted looks. No, Darla said immediately. Absolutely not. Do not even start. Oh, we're starting, Talia said. Raina leaned forward. Does he like you? Darla shrugged helplessly. I don't know. He's quiet. It's hard to tell. He came back to your house with a spare part, Brielle pointed out. Men don't do that unless they're interested or being held at gunpoint. He's a plumber, Darla said. It's literally his job. Talia arched a brow. Is it his job to circle the neighborhood like a calm repairman guardian angel? Darla opened her mouth, then closed it. Okay, maybe not. Raina grinned. Do you want him to be interested? Darla froze. Her heart knew the answer. Her brain was refusing to cooperate. She hesitated, the truth pulling forward like a tide. I think so. Her friend squealed. Juniper, safe at home, probably felt the disturbance in the force. Later that night, after Darla drove home and stepped into her quiet kitchen, she couldn't resist glancing through the window toward the street. No truck, no Mason, just a still winter evening. She set her keys down, exhaled slowly, and let the silence settle around her. This kind of silence didn't feel lonely anymore. It felt full of possibility, full of something that felt almost like hope. She walked into the living room and froze. Juniper was sitting in front of the door, staring at it, as if waiting. Oh no, Darla whispered, kneeling beside the cat. You too. Juniper blinked serenely. Darla pressed her forehead to the door and groaned. I'm doomed, she murmured. Completely doomed. But even as she said it, her lips curved into a smile she couldn't fight. Because deep down, beneath the fear, beneath the hesitation, something warm had started to flicker. Something steady. Something quiet. Chapter 4. Old flames. Old patterns. Darla was halfway through folding laundry, Juniper monitoring her progress with supervisory disdain, when her phone rang. She didn't recognize the number, but her stomach tightened anyway. Only one person in her life used new numbers like disposable napkins. She answered cautiously. Hello, Darla. It's me, Lex. Of course it was. Her spine straightened on instinct, a reflex carved into her muscles by too many years of bending around someone else's moods. She swallowed. What do you want, Lex? I just wanted to talk. You didn't answer the other day. That wasn't an accident, she said. A sigh. Smooth, practiced, designed to make her feel unreasonable. Darla, come on. We were together a long time. I just want to clear the air. No, she said, gripping a dish towel harder than necessary. You want to feel better about what you did. Those are not the same thing. Silence hummed in the line. You're being dramatic. There it was, the familiar erosion, disguised as concern. Darla closed her eyes. Lex, this conversation is over. She hung up before he could reply, then stood there for a moment, her heart thumping, heat prickling behind her eyes. She shook herself hard, wishing she could shed the old patterns as easily as a coat. Juniper trotted over and pawed her ankle. I know, Darla whispered, scooping up the cat. Old ghosts. Bad timing. Her heartbeat slowed, but the timing was about to get worse. 30 minutes later, she heard another knock at the door, 3 firm taps. Not impatient, not hesitant. She knew who it was before she opened it. Mason stood on her porch, tool bag slung over one shoulder, eyes warm but observing. He seemed to take in her expression instantly, a faint crease forming between his brows. Am I early? He asked. No, she said quickly. No, you're right on time. She had booked him, totally innocently, for a garbage disposal tune-up. A tune-up the appliance absolutely did not need. But after 2 days of talking herself out of being ridiculous, she had settled on the least embarrassing excuse, maintenance. He stepped inside, glancing subtly at her face again. You okay? I'm fine, she lied. He nodded once, but his eyes said he didn't believe her. He didn't push, though. Mason wasn't a pusher. He was a quiet observer, letting the world speak first. He moved to the kitchen, kneeling under the sink while she hovered uselessly, wrestling with the remnants of her phone call. She tried to steady her breathing, but her pulse still throbbed with the familiar sting of old hurts. Mason paused mid-adjustment. If you want to talk, you can. Her throat tightened. I don't want to dump my drama on you. You wouldn't be. It was such a simple sentence. Gentle, unassuming, no pressure, no prying, just an open door. She leaned against the counter. It was my ex. He set the wrench down, turning his head slightly toward her. He keeps calling, she continued, acting like I owe him a conversation, like I'm the one being unreasonable. Mason didn't move, didn't interrupt, just listened, which was somehow more disarming than any speech. I spent years trying to be what he needed, she said, voice trembling, and he just took and cheated, and then acted confused when I finally walked away. She laughed once, brittle. And now he wants closure. He wants me to help him feel better about blowing up our relationship. I'm not doing that again. I'm not being that version of myself again. She forced herself to inhale deeply. Mason shifted slightly, enough for her to see the calm steadiness in his eyes. You're not wrong. Her chest tightened. She hadn't realized how much she needed to hear that. He rose from under the sink, wiping his hands on a cloth. Some people don't know what they had until it's gone. That's not your fault. Tears pricked her eyes. Annoying, involuntary. She blinked rapidly. Sorry. I didn't mean to dump all that. I told you, he said in his low, quiet way. It's not dumping. Her chest warmed, gratitude curling inside her like a small flame. Mason wasn't a fixer of people, just pipes and broken connectors, but somehow his presence soothed all the same. But then, of course, timing betrayed her again. A car pulled into the driveway. Darla stiffened instantly. Lex stepped out. Mason looked at her, a question forming in his eyes. No, she whispered, shaking her head. He wasn't supposed to. Lex strode toward the door like he owned the ground beneath him. Darla stepped outside before he could knock, closing the door behind her. What are you doing here? She demanded. Lex ran a hand through his hair, expression dripping with the same smooth remorse she'd fallen for too many times. You wouldn't pick up. I just want to talk. You don't get to show up uninvited, she said, voice sharp. Darla, come on. I know you're upset. I'm not upset, she snapped. I'm done. His jaw tightened. There's someone else? Isn't there? She blinked. What? No. But he glanced pointedly toward the door. And before she could stop him, Mason stepped out. Not confrontational, not defensive, just present. Mason's gaze flicked from Lex to Darla, reading the situation with quiet clarity. Lex scoffed. Unbelievable. 2 weeks and you're already… What? Dating the plumber. Darla felt heat crawl up her neck. Lex, stop. You don't get to make assumptions. Oh, I get to make some, he said. Like how fast you moved on. I didn't move on, she shot back. I moved away from you. Lex faltered at that. Good. She crossed her arms. Go home, Lex. I just… Go, she repeated firm. He stared at her for a long, searching moment. Whatever he hoped to find wasn't there anymore. Lex exhaled sharply and left without another word. The moment his car disappeared down the street, Darla sagged against the railing, all the tension draining from her limbs. Mason stood a respectful distance away, hands tucked loosely in his jacket pockets, gaze steady. You okay? He asked softly. Darla laughed weakly. If I say yes, it'll be the biggest lie of my life. He nodded once, then stepped a little closer, but not too close. You handled it. I almost didn't. Still did. His words were simple, but they landed with weight. She exhaled shakily. I'm sorry you had to see that. Don't be. It's not exactly a great look. Looked like someone setting a boundary, he said. Nothing wrong with that. Her eyes stung again. Stupid emotions. Stupid vulnerability. I'm a mess, she muttered. You're human. Something in his voice, gentle, grounded, made her look up. And in that moment, Darla realized, he wasn't just quiet. He was steady. Steadier than she'd ever known in a man. And the thought terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. Mason, she said softly. I didn't want you to think I was still involved with him. His gaze flicked up, meeting hers for a brief but charged second. I didn't think that, he said. Not after hearing you. A small breath escaped her, unbidden relief loosening her shoulders. He stepped back slightly. I should finish the disposal. She nodded. Yeah, okay. But the repair barely took 2 minutes. And when he packed his tools, the space between them felt charged, delicate, and impossibly new. At the door, he paused. If he comes back and bothers you, Mason said quietly, you can call me. The words weren't dramatic, not possessive, just a calm offering. Promise of steadiness. Darla swallowed, her voice soft. Thank you. He nodded once, his signature, and left. When she closed the door, her breath trembled out of her in a long exhale. Juniper? She whispered, looking down at the cat padding over with curiosity. I think I might actually be in trouble. But for the first time in years, the trouble felt like possibility instead of chaos. Chapter 5. Misunderstandings and Misdirections. Darla woke up the next morning with a strange combination of determination and dread. An emotional smoothie she did not order. Last night had been a lot. Lex showing up, Mason witnessing it, her heart doing things she refused to label. She stared at the ceiling. I am not spiraling, she said out loud. Juniper, curled beside her, flicked a single judgmental ear. Fine, I'm spiraling slightly. By the time she made coffee, she had convinced herself that the most logical next step was simple maturity. She just needed to talk to Mason, clarify that things were not whatever Lex had implied, maybe even apologize for the chaos. No big deal. Except it was a big deal because she absolutely cared what Mason thought of her. And that fact was so terrifying she nearly spilled her mug twice. She grabbed her phone and pulled up the number on his invoice. Her thumb hovered over the call button. Okay, she whispered. Just be normal, she called. For rings. Then, yeah, his voice. calm and warm and very much alive in her ear. Darla forgot how to breathe for a second. Mason, hi. It's Darla. From my sink. Oh great. Perfect start. Brilliant. There was a soft exhale, maybe a chuckle. Morning. Everything okay? Yeah. I mean, mostly. Yes. I just wanted to, thank you again for yesterday and also apologize for the whole ex-boyfriend situation. You don't have to apologize, he said. I know, but still, I just don't want you to think I'm chaotic. You're not chaotic. Well, I'm a little chaotic, but not in a relationship baggage tornado way. More of a, my shopping cart always squeaks kind of way. Silence. Oh no. Had she overtalked? She usually only overtalked when nervous. Which she wasn't, obviously. Then Mason said quietly, you don't owe me explanations. I know. I just want to be clear. She hesitated. And I thought maybe we could talk? In person. A long pause. Today's packed, he said. Got jobs all over town. Oh, of course. Totally fine. Her stomach sank like a stone. Another time, then. Yeah, he said. Another time. They hung up, and Darla immediately placed her forehead on the counter. Congratulations, she told herself. You sounded like a malfunctioning GPS. Juniper meowed, which Darla translated as, you sure did. By early afternoon, Darla had convinced herself that she needed an errand. A totally normal errand. One that just so happened to take her across town, where she might see a white work truck with Hale Home Repair on the door. She told herself she wasn't casually bumping into Mason. She was simply participating in the economy. She went to the hardware store, which, okay, was suspicious already. She wandered the aisles aimlessly, picking up screws she didn't need, examining doorknobs like she was choosing one for a museum. She kept glancing toward the entrance like a raccoon waiting for a specific garbage truck. After 10 minutes, she said firmly, this is ridiculous, and turned to leave, and there he was, not Mason. Her ex-Lex stepped into the aisle like a poorly timed plot twist. Darla froze, clutching a pack of washers like a shield. Darla, he said with a forced gentle tone. We need to talk. Nope. She spun around so fast a display of plastic fittings rattled. Come on, Lex said, following. You didn't give me a chance yesterday. Yesterday was your chance. You wasted it. He stepped in front of her, blocking the aisle. I don't understand why you're being like this. I'm not being anything, she snapped. I'm done. You don't mean that. We've been through too much. We've been through too much because you put us through too much. Lex frowned. This isn't you, Darla. Oh my God, she muttered. There it is. The classic you're not yourself manipulation line. Lex read the room. I don't. Everything okay here? Darla's breath caught. Mason stood at the end of the aisle, a coil of copper piping in one hand. Calm. Solid. Still. Lex's eyes narrowed. What, are you following her around now? Mason didn't even blink. Working. Lex scoffed. Sure you are. Darla stepped between them, heat rising in her chest. Lex, leave. Now. Lex looked at her, then at Mason, then back at her. Something ugly flashed in his expression. Pride, defeat, resentment. He shook his head. Fine, he said. Do whatever you want. He left. When he disappeared around the corner, Darla exhaled shakily, hands trembling just enough to betray her. Mason stepped closer, slowly, deliberately, like approaching a startled animal. You okay? No, she admitted. I mean, yes, eventually, possibly. Ask me again in an hour. He nodded, setting the coil in his basket. Didn't mean to interrupt. Oh, please interrupt anytime he's around, she said. Interrupt with fireworks, with drums, with a marching band if necessary. A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. I'll keep that in mind. She laughed, too loud, too nervous. Sorry, I didn't expect to see him, or you, or anyone. I should go. She passed him, flustered, embarrassed by everything. Her rambling, her attempt at casually bumping into him, her ex showing up like emotional mildew. Darla, he called gently. She turned. You didn't look for me, right? He asked, his voice hesitant, almost guarded. Her heart lurched. What? No. I mean, yes, maybe a little, but not in a creepy way. I just wanted to talk, not flirt. I mean, not that I don't want to flirt. I just, oh God, words. His brows lifted slightly, like her answer surprised him. She covered her face. I swear I'm not usually this ridiculous. I don't think you're ridiculous, he said quietly. She lowered her hands, blinking. You don't. No. He shifted, rubbing the back of his neck. A new gesture, one she hadn't seen before, one that looked like his version of nerves. I just thought, maybe you wanted space after yesterday. No. I wanted clarity. And, do you have it? She swallowed. Not really. He nodded once, absorbing that. Then, he glanced around the aisle, then back at her. We can talk. After my last job. Her breath caught. Yeah. Yeah. The rest of the day crawled by with torturous slowness. She reorganized her bookshelf again. She cleaned the dishwasher filter. She even considered alphabetizing her spices but stopped because she didn't want to become a person who alphabetized her spices. At 6:30, her phone buzzed. Mason, done for the day. If you still want to talk, I can stop by. Her stomach flipped. Darla, yes, please, whenever is good. 10 minutes later, his truck pulled into her driveway. She opened the door before he could knock. Mason stood there, hands in pockets, expression open but cautious. Hey, he said. Hey. They stepped inside. Darla's living room felt suddenly small, like her emotions were taking up all the air. He leaned against the arm of the couch, giving her space. What did you want to talk about? She took a breath. I just want to be honest. Yesterday was embarrassing. Today was embarrassing. My ex is embarrassing. I'm embarrassing. You're not, he said. Okay. But I'm slightly embarrassing. Maybe slightly. She snorted. Thank you for the honesty. He nodded. She wrung her hands. I didn't want you thinking I was still tangled up with him. Or that I'm looking for drama. I don't think that. You didn't seem interested in talking today, she added softly. He looked down briefly. I didn't want to assume anything. Assume what? That you wanted me around. Her breath hitched. I do. His eyes lifted to hers. Slow, steady, warm. Oh, he said quietly. She laughed nervously. Is that a good oh or a bad oh? Good. Something in the air changed, gentle, charged, almost fragile. He stepped closer. I like being around you. Her heart flipped. You do. Yeah. She exhaled shakily. Okay, good. Because I feel whatever this is. And I'm trying not to overthink it. But I'm me. So, you don't have to explain, he said. We can take it slow. Relief washed over her like warmth spreading through cold fingers. Slow is good, she said. Slow is, right? He offered a small smile, soft, real, unguarded. And Darla felt something in her chest settle. For the first time in a long time, slow didn't feel scary. It felt safe. Chapter 6. Letting down the guard. Darla had never been so aware of her own breathing. It was ridiculous, really. She'd had people in her house a million times. Friends, her ex, repair workers, strange acquaintances roped in by her friends for surprise mixers. But having Mason in her living room felt different, more delicate, more dangerous in a quiet, hopeful way. He stood near the edge of the room, hands tucked loosely into his jacket pockets, posture relaxed but watchful, like he was giving her space without stepping out of reach. Darla appreciated the subtlety. It wasn't something she'd ever gotten from loud charmers or emotional tornadoes. She took a breath to steady herself. So, talking. We should do that. Yeah, he said softly, but neither of them started right away. The silence wasn't awkward, it had weight. The kind that let thoughts rearrange themselves. Finally, Mason cleared his throat. You said you wanted clarity. I do. Darla moved to the couch but didn't sit, instead leaning against the armrest. Her fingers fidgeted with the seam of her sweater. I guess the truth is, I like having you around, and I didn't realize how much until Lex showed up and made everything feel messy. A shadow of worry, barely noticeable, passed through Mason's expression, as if he had quietly prepared himself for the possibility she might say something that hurt. She hurried on. I'm not still tied to Lex. Not emotionally. I don't want anything to do with him. But I also don't want you thinking I jump from one disaster to the next. I'm not. Her throat tightened. I'm not that person. I don't think you are. Mason's voice was steady as ever, but something warmer had entered it. She swallowed. Yesterday you seemed distant, and today too. His gaze lowered briefly before rising again. Yeah, I was trying not to assume. Assume what? That you'd want me around after all that. He paused, searching for the right words. And I didn't want to make things harder. Her heart squeezed. You're not making anything harder. A faint, almost shy smile touched his mouth. Okay. Darla felt her breath catch. How could a single word spoken so softly tug at her so strongly? She stepped a bit closer. I really do want to get to know you better. He shifted his weight, rubbing the back of his neck with one hand. A gesture she was beginning to recognize as Mason Fredesh. This makes me nervous, but I'm still here. He took a slow breath. There's stuff you should know, he said. Okay, she said gently. He hesitated. Not out of fear, but out of carefulness. As if choosing which parts of himself to reveal was unfamiliar terrain. I don't talk a lot, he began. I've noticed, she teased softly. He gave a tiny huff of amusement before continuing. But it's not because I don't have things to say. I just don't always know when saying them is the right move. That's okay, she said. I tend to talk too much. We balance each other out. Mason's eyes warmed. I like the way you talk. Darla froze. Her heart decided it was a good time to reenact a minor explosion. He looked away briefly, maybe embarrassed by his own honesty. My last relationship didn't go well, he said quietly. She said I was too closed off. Hard to read. That she never knew what I was thinking. Darla's heart softened. That doesn't sound like your fault. She wasn't wrong, he said. I don't say much. I'm not good with emotional stuff. He exhaled. And I don't want to make someone feel alone because I don't have the same words they do. You didn't make me feel alone, Darla said. You made me feel calm. He blinked, almost startled. Calm? Yeah, she said with a shy smile. You're grounded, solid. You don't talk to impress. You just show up. That's rare. He absorbed that quietly, the tension in his shoulders easing. You deserve someone steady. I think I deserve someone real, she corrected softly. And you feel real to me. His gaze locked onto hers with something intense but gentle, something that could be mistaken for silence but was actually understanding. Finally, he said, I want to take this slow, but I want to try. Her pulse fluttered. I want that too. He nodded once, his version of a promise. A small knock-scratch sound broke the moment. Juniper trotted into the room and jumped onto the arm of the couch, eyeing Mason like she owned him and was checking that he hadn't wandered off. Darla smirked. She really likes you. Mason reached out and scratched under Juniper's chin. The cat instantly melted, pressing into his hand and purring loudly. She's easy to read, he murmured. Darla folded her arms. What about me? Am I easy to read? He paused, still petting the cat. Easier than you think. Oh really? She said, intrigued. Okay, read me then. He looked up, eyes meeting hers. You talk when you're nervous. She froze. You fidget with your sleeves when you're trying to be careful about something you want to say. Her breath hitched. And you look at people's mouths when you're trying to tell if they're going to interrupt. Her heart thudded. He tilted his head slightly. I pay attention. Now she was the one who didn't know how to breathe. She laughed softly, shaking her head. You're full of surprises. I don't think I am, he said. I think I just notice things. The air warmed around them again. Quiet, charged, meaningful. After a moment, Mason straightened. Can I ask something? Anything, she said. You said you liked having me around. He hesitated, vulnerability flickering across his expression. Why? Her smile softened. Because you're thoughtful. Because you're steady. Because being around you feels easy in a way I didn't know was possible. He absorbed that, eyes lowering as though the words weighed something. That's good, he murmured quietly. I want to make things easy for you, not harder. You do, she said. He met her gaze again, and something in the quiet between them shifted, like the air itself recognized the moment. She took a small step toward him. He didn't move away. Mason, she said, voice soft. I'm trying to be brave here. He nodded gently. I know. And I'm trying not to rush anything. Neither am I. But I also... She stopped, because the words suddenly left her. He tilted his head. You also what? She took another breath. Want to know if I can hug you? His lips parted in surprise. Real, unfiltered surprise. Before his expression softened into something impossibly warm. Yeah, he said quietly. You can. Darla stepped closer, wrapping her arms around him carefully, like he was something she wanted to protect. He returned the hug slowly, one arm then the other, pulling her in with gentle certainty. He wasn't stiff. He wasn't unsure. He was warm, solid, steady, safe. Her head rested against his chest, and she felt his breath slow, then deepen, as if he was letting something unspoken settle between them. His hand slid lightly along her back, not possessive, just present. They stood like that for a long, full moment. When they finally pulled apart, neither stepped far. Mason looked at her with quiet sincerity. Slow, he said softly. But, together. Darla smiled, a real, unguarded smile. Together. Juniper meowed loudly, as if reclaiming the attention. Darla sighed. And supervised, apparently. Mason chuckled, the softest, warmest sound she'd ever heard from him. And Darla realized she could get used to that sound. She could get used to him. Chapter 7. A comedy of small disasters. Darla woke the next morning with an unfamiliar, glowing awareness in her chest, like something warm had unfurled during the night and settled comfortably under her ribs. It wasn't infatuation. It wasn't panic. It was the possibility of something steady. She stretched, smiling to herself before reality crashed in. Oh, no, 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 she muttered, bolting upright. I'm smiling before coffee. This is dangerous territory. Juniper lifted her head from the foot of the bed and blinked slowly, as if offering feline side-eye. I know, Darla insisted. I'm losing it. The day passed in a blur of anticipation she pretended wasn't anticipation. She cleaned the kitchen twice. She scrolled aimlessly through recipes she'd never attempt. She texted her friends that she might have a date, but also not exactly, and don't ask questions. Of course, they asked questions anyway, especially Talia, who had a sixth sense for romantic developments and absolutely zero chill. But for the first time in her life, Darla didn't spill every detail to the group chat. Not because Mason was a secret. She just wanted something about him to be hers alone, at least for now. At 6 o'clock, her phone buzzed. Mason, If you're free, want to grab coffee? Or food? Something low-key. Her heart fluttered. Darla, food sounds nice. Mason, there's a diner near the lake. Not fancy, but good pie. Darla, you had me at pie. By 7. She was waiting just inside the entrance of Maple Shore Diner. Her nerves tapped dancing in her stomach. The diner smelled like coffee, pancakes, and nostalgia. A bell jingled every time someone came or left. When the door opened and Mason walked in, the world somehow quieted without actually becoming quiet. He wore a dark Henley and a soft flannel jacket, hair slightly mussed from the cold wind outside. He saw her instantly. Their eyes met, and the small, warm smile he gave her felt like sunlight. "Hey," he said. "Hey," she echoed, cheeks warming. He gestured to a booth by the window. "Good spot. Perfect." They slid into the booth, sitting across from each other. The waitress brought menus, but neither really looked at them. "So," Mason said, voice low, "how was your day?" "Productive," she said. This was a lie. The only productive part was her brief existential crisis and a 30-minute debate with Juniper about self-respect. "You?" "Busy," he said. "But good." He wasn't a rambler, but he wasn't closed off either. He spoke the way he was considered steady, present. Darla found herself relaxing into the silence between sentences, which was a novelty. Silence with her ex had always felt like waiting for a storm to hit. With Mason, silence was a soft blanket. When the waitress returned, Darla ordered a grilled cheese and fries. Mason ordered the turkey club and whatever pie is warm. The waitress winked. "We bake fresh every morning. You'll both be happy." As she left, Mason's gaze drifted back to Darla with quiet curiosity. "So, you said you wanted to talk more. About everything." "Yeah," she said, fingers tracing patterns on her water glass. "I guess I'm trying to figure out how to do this differently. Slower. More intentionally." He nodded. "Slow works. And I'm trying not to let my past make me flinch at things that are probably normal." "Like what?" "Like," she hesitated. "Like the fact that you're not trying to impress me." His brows lifted slightly. "Is that a bad thing?" "No," she said quickly. "It's really comforting. But I'm not used to it." He seemed to think on that. "I'm not good at impressing people. But I care." "I know." She smiled at him, soft and sincere. "And that impresses me more than you think." Before Mason could respond, the waitress returned with their plates, and a disaster waiting to happen. She set the grilled cheese down. Then Mason's sandwich. Then the pie. Apple, steaming, beautiful, deadly. Balanced too close to the edge of the tray. And gravity claimed it. The entire slice launched itself off the plate, somersaulted in the air, and landed squarely in Darla's lap. Darla froze. Mason blinked. The waitress gasped, horrified. "Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." But Darla burst into laughter. Loud, unfiltered laughter. Because of course this would happen. She wasn't allowed to have a smooth, elegant date. Ever. Fate refused. "I think," she said between laughs, "I have been pied." Mason's mouth twitched, then curved into a full, warm smile that was just rare enough to feel like a privilege. "You okay?" he asked. "Sticky," she said. "But okay." The waitress apologized 5 more times and rushed away with promises of free pie and extra napkins. Darla dabbed at the syrupy mess on her jeans. "I swear, weird things gravitate toward me." "I don't think it was you," Mason said. "Pie flies on its own sometimes." She snorted. "Sure, it's airborne." He grabbed a handful of napkins, handing them over. "Here. Thank you." She patted at the damage. "This is probably a terrible first date impression." He tilted his head. "This is a date?" The question wasn't teasing. It was earnest, vulnerable. Her breath caught. "Do you want it to be?" He didn't hesitate. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I do." Something inside her softened completely. "Well," she said, smiling. "Then yes, it's a date." They ate with thief glances and small, shy smiles. They talked. About work. About favorite movies. About childhood quirks. Mason revealed he used to build little wooden boats with his grandfather. Darla confessed she once tried to run away from home with a backpack containing only crayons and a granola bar. At one point, Darla said something ridiculous and Mason laughed. Really laughed. A warm, low sound that wrapped around her like an embrace. And somewhere in the middle of the chaos, the syrup stains, and the easy conversation, Darla realized she felt light. Light in a way she hadn't felt in years. After dinner, they stepped outside into crisp air. Snowflakes drifted lazily down, illuminated by the glow of the street lamps. Darla zipped her coat, tucking her hands in her pockets. Mason stood beside her, close enough that their shoulders brushed lightly. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" he asked. "For tonight. And for not freaking out when I got pied." He shrugged gently. "Stuff happens. Stuff always happens to me," she said. "I don't mind," he replied. 2 simple words. But something in the way he said them made her chest warm. They walked toward her car slowly. Snow crunched lightly underfoot. Halfway there, Darla stopped and turned to face him. Mason, he stopped too. Yeah. She hesitated, breath visible in the cold air. I like this. I like you. His gaze softened. Good. They stood in silence for a moment, the kind that felt like a held breath. Can I? She began, then trailed off suddenly unsure. Mason didn't move closer, didn't assume, but his expression warmed, encouraging without pressure. You can, he said gently. Darla stepped closer and rose onto her toes. He dipped his head slightly, meeting her halfway. Their lips brushed, soft, tentative, warm. A first kiss that wasn't claiming or rushed. Just a quiet promise, like a beginning unfolding in the hush of snowfall. When they parted, Darla's breath trembled out of her. Mason's eyes were warm, steady. Slow, he murmured. Slow, she echoed, smiling. But very, very good. Juniper would absolutely judge her later. Her friends would absolutely lose their minds. Her heart, however, felt very sure. And for the first time in a long time, Darla allowed herself to trust that feeling. Chapter 8. Choosing the quiet, Darla woke the next morning with the softest ache in her cheeks, left over from smiling too much. Not just at the kiss, but at the entire evening. At how easy it had all felt even when it wasn't. At how naturally Mason fit into the quiet parts of her life. She stretched her arms above her head, exhaling deeply. Okay, she told the ceiling. Don't freak out. Juniper hopped onto her chest and sat, full weight, full judgment. I said, don't freak out, Darla repeated, pushing the cat gently aside. The truth was she'd been waiting a long time for something that didn't feel like performing. And last night, high accidents and awkward confessions and snow-dusted kisses felt real, really real. She got up, made coffee, and tried not to check her phone every 5 seconds. She failed, of course, but failing felt sweet when, at 9:07 a.m., her phone buzzed. Mason, good morning. Hope your jeans survived the pie. Her grin spread instantly. Darla, barely. Moment of silence for the denim. Mason, what are you up to today? Darla, thinking of having a quiet day. You? Mason, finishing a job at noon. Want to go for a walk later? Slow pace. Her heart warmed at the gentle tease. Darla, yes. Slow sounds perfect. At 3:30, she met him at the lakeside trail. The winter sun glowed pale gold through bare trees, the air crisp but not biting. Mason stood waiting near the trailhead, hands in his pockets, rocking back on his heels with a subtle rhythm. When he saw her, he smiled, slow and soft, and something inside her steadied. Hey, he murmured. Hi, she replied, cheeks warming already. Ready to walk slowly and mindfully and not slip on ice? Always, he deadpanned, offering his arm in a quiet, understated gesture. She took it, their steps naturally falling into sync. They walked without rush, without pressure. Occasionally their hands brushed. Occasionally he glanced at her with that calm, curious expression she was still learning to read. About halfway down the trail, she asked, can I ask you something personal? Yeah. What made you want to try this with me? I mean, I know you're not impulsive. He took his time with the answer. You're honest, he said. More than most people I've met. She snorted. I'm a chaos parade. But honest, he repeated. You say what you feel, even when it's messy. I like that. Makes it easier to trust you. A warm flutter moved through her chest. I trust you too. He nodded, satisfied, like that was important to hear. Their steps slowed as the trail opened toward a viewpoint overlooking the frozen lake. They stopped near the railing, wind brushing their coats. For a moment they just stared at the horizon. The quiet blue, the steadiness of winter. You okay? Mason asked, scanning her face. I'm better than okay, she said. But I think there's something I need to do before I can really start something new. He nodded once. Your ex. Yeah. He didn't look threatened, just understanding. If you want company after, he said gently, I'll be around. She smiled. Thank you. That evening, Darla stood in her living room staring at her phone like it was a venomous creature she had to wrangle. Juniper sat several feet away as if expressing, you're on your own with this one. Darla inhaled deeply and dialed. Lex picked up on the second ring. What? He said, clipped, irritated. This is the last conversation we're ever going to have, she said. Silence. Then, Darla? No, she cut in. Listen, you don't get to rewrite the past. You don't get to ask for closure so you can feel better. You don't get to drop into my life like a bad commercial. Wow, he scoffed. Real mature. I am being mature, she snapped. For the first time in a long time, I'm being clear. You were careless with me, Lex. You knew it and you didn't care until I left. That's not love. That's possession. Lex went quiet. And I'm done being someone's possession, she said. I'm done accepting the bare minimum dressed up as effort. I'm done waiting for men who only show up when they lose the spotlight. You think you found someone better? He asked, voice tight. I found someone quieter, she said. And that's more than enough. She hung up before he could respond, her chest expanding with something that felt like freedom. Raw, exhilarating freedom. Juniper trotted over and rubbed her cheek against Darla's shin. Yeah? Darla whispered, running a hand over the cat's fur. I think I'm finally done. A soft knock came 20 minutes later. Darla hesitated, breath catching. But when she opened the door, it was Mason, standing there in the dusk, steady as always. Hey, he said, voice soft. You okay? She nodded, then stepped back to let him in. I'm good, she said. Better now. He closed the door quietly, watching her with that full attention warmth she'd come to crave. How'd it go? Clean, she said. And overdue. He nodded once, a gesture of approval rather than analysis. They moved into the living room. Darla sat on the couch. Mason sat beside her, close but not crowding. Their knees brushed. I feel like I can finally breathe, she admitted. You look lighter, she smiled. Do I look ridiculous for being this relieved? No, Mason said. You look unburdened. Something in the way he said it made her chest flutter. She leaned her shoulder against him, tentatively at first. He responded instantly, shifting so she fit against his side more comfortably, his arm draping naturally behind her. She sighed contentedly. You're really good at this. What's this? He asked. Being steady, she said. Being simple. In the good way. Not boring simple. Just peaceful simple. I didn't even know people like you existed. Mason chuckled softly. Same for you. Thought people this honest only existed in movies. She nudged him playfully. Are you calling me dramatic? A little, he said, brushing his fingers along her arm. But in a way that makes sense. Wow, she said. Romance novelist level praise right there. He shook his head, smiling. After a long moment of quiet, comfortable, warm, full, he asked, what do you want this to look like? Us. She bit her bottom lip. I want something mutual. No performing. No chasing. Just showing up for each other. I can do that. I know, she said softly. That's why I want this. He turned slightly toward her, his gaze steady but tender. I don't want to rush anything, but I want to be here. With you. Her eyes warmed. And I want someone who listens, she said. Not because they're waiting to reply, but because they care. He reached up and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. I listen. I know. His hand lingered near her cheek. She leaned into the touch instinctively. And then she kissed him, soft at first, then deeper, her hand sliding to his shoulder. He responded with quiet certainty, one hand cupping the back of her head gently, as though he knew exactly how fragile this moment was for her. When they parted, their foreheads rested together. This feels right, she whispered. Yeah, he murmured. It does. She settled against him again, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her. The world felt quiet. Not empty, not lonely, just quiet in the way she had always longed for. A quiet she chose. A quiet that chose her back. Juniper leapt onto the couch, curling at their feet with a satisfied sigh. Mason glanced down. She okay with this? She's supervising, Darla said. She likes you. Good, he said. I like her too. Darla laughed softly, then took his hand in hers. Together, they sat in the warm hush of the living room, with no drama, no chaos, no pressure. Just two people choosing the quiet, choosing each other, in a world that often confused noise with meaning. For the first time in years, Darla knew exactly what she wanted. And she had found it. Epilogue. The quiet they chose. Spring arrived slowly in Leelanau, the ice melting in delicate sheets along the lake's edge. New green pressed up through thawing soil. Birds returned with sleepy morning songs. And Darla Thomas discovered that happiness arrived much the same way. Quietly, gently, on its own timeline. It had been 3 months since she told Lex goodbye. 3 months since the evening she chose stillness over chaos. 3 months since Mason Hale sat with her in the quiet, letting her lean on him without fear. Since then, their relationship had unfolded like spring itself. Patient, gradual, rooted. They didn't rush. They didn't force. They simply showed up every day in small ways that mattered more than either expected. This particular Saturday morning found Darla at the farmer's market carrying a canvas tote, Juniper's fur still clinging to the strap. She browsed through stalls of fresh flowers and early season produce, sunlight warming her shoulders. She felt Mason before she saw him. He walked up behind her, boots steady against the pavement, presence unmistakable in that grounding way she loved. You found the good strawberries, he said. She turned, smiling. I had competition. A terrifying grandmother elbowed me. I'm sure you stood your ground. No, I absolutely surrendered. She had sharp elbows. He huffed a quiet laugh, the corner of his mouth lifting. He brushed a stray hair from her forehead with a gentle flick of his fingers. A gesture so natural now it made her chest warm. How was your morning? She asked. Easy, he said. Finished a small job. Thought I'd meet you here. Darla nudged him lightly. And I thought you didn't do weekends. I do now, he said, shrugging. Sometimes. Ever since they started dating, Mason had been adapting in subtle ways, making room for her, for them, without ever compromising who he was. She admired that. She needed that. They walked together from stall to stall, occasionally bumping shoulders, occasionally brushing hands. Every time their fingers touched, hers buzzed. When they reached the flower booth, Mason gestured to a small bundle of wildflowers. Nothing fancy, just stems of yellow, white, and pale purple. These look like you, he said. Simple? She teased. Warm, he corrected softly. Unexpected. Right. Her breath caught. She accepted the bouquet, cheeks warming. You're getting better at compliments. He nodded. I practice. She grinned. On who? Juniper. Oh my God. She doesn't respond, he said. But she listens. That tracks. They started walking again. Flow. Airs in her arms, strawberries in his. The familiar ease between them wrapped around Darla like a comfortable blanket. A sudden gust of wind blew through the market, lifting her hair and ruffling Mason's jacket. You cold? He asked. No, she said. You? No. They both knew it wasn't about the weather. Being near each other had become its own kind of warmth. After the market, they returned to Darla's house. Juniper met them at the door with an assessing stare, sniffed the strawberries, then the flowers, then Mason's boots, as if conducting a routine inspection. She approves, Mason said. She tolerates, Darla corrected. They set the groceries on the counter. Darla placed the flowers in a small ceramic vase, watching the stems settle in the water. They're perfect, she murmured. Mason leaned against the counter, arms crossed lightly. Good. She turned to him. I like this. He tilted his head. What part? All of it, she said. The small days, the normal ones. I've never had this with someone before. His eyes softened, slow and warm. Me neither. A long moment passed between them, a moment so familiar now, but still precious. Then Mason reached out and took her hand. Not urgently, not dramatically, just firmly enough that she felt the steadiness she always knew him for. Darla, he said quietly, can I ask you something? Of course. He rubbed his thumb along her knuckles, a tiny, thoughtful gesture. Are you happy? With us? Her heartbeat steadied, then found a rhythm that felt like home. Yes, she said. Happier than I've ever been. He absorbed her words slowly, as he absorbed everything with patience, with care. Me too, he said. She squeezed his hand. Good. He squeezed back. Good. They laughed at themselves, soft and satisfied. Later that afternoon, they walked down to the lakeshore. The breeze carried the scent of warming earth and the distant promise of summer. They sat on a fallen log near the water's edge, shoulders touching, their quiet blending with the sounds of nature around them. You know, Darla said, I used to think relationships had to be loud, dramatic, full of big gestures. And now, Mason asked. She leaned her head against his shoulder. Now I think quiet is better. He rested his cheek on the top of her head. Quiet lasts longer. Yeah, she said. It does. They watched a seagull hop along the rocks, Juniper prowling behind them on an invisible leash of personal outrage. After a minute, Mason spoke again. I didn't think I'd be good at this. At what? Being someone's person. He paused. But you make it feel possible. She swallowed, eyes softening. You are good at it. I only talk when I have something important to say, he murmured. And this is important. She lifted her head, meeting his gaze. He looked at her in that steady, grounding way she'd come to crave. I want to keep choosing you, every day. Slow or fast, whatever we need. Her chest tightened, not with fear, but with the exact opposite. I want that too, she whispered. The breeze stirred the wildflowers in her hair. Mason brushed one petal free. Good, he murmured. Then he kissed her, slow, warm, certain. A kiss that wasn't about beginnings or endings, just presence, just promise. When they parted, Darla sighed contentedly and leaned against him again. The lake shimmered. Juniper sat proudly between them like their tiny, judgmental chaperone. And Darla knew, truly knew, that a quiet life wasn't a settling. It was a choice she had made, a choice she would keep making, a choice Mason made right beside her. The quiet she once thought she wanted alone had become something new, something shared, something steady, something good.